Hello, and congratulations, you've made it through 1/5 of the course. Good job. Most of you are doing pretty good and are making progress with your writing and thinking about argumentation and evidence. Below this video, I've placed another little video from YouTube about citation. It's really important that you work out citation and what plagiarism is. There are a few people who have been taking the odd sentence from Getz and paraphrasing it, but not really a paraphrase to the extent which is necessary to avoid plagiarism. I'm going to put another video up in the middle of next week about how to paraphrase, but I don't want to overload you. But basically, at the end of the day, I shouldn't be able to spot which sentences come straight from Getz quite so readily. So it is important that you cite anything that's not your own original ideas and thoughts and words. If it's not your own words, you need to put quotation marks around it and put a citation in. If you are quoting, you need to introduce quotes. You can't just plop them in as a whole sentence. That doesn't work. And if it's if you're not taking somebody else's words but you're borrowing their thoughts, you need to still cite that. If you're mentioning a historian's ideas, you need to cite that. This doesn't weaken your case in any way. In fact, it makes it stronger, because this is evidence, this is the proof you need to support your argument. Another thing that I want to mention that I'd noticed is not all of you, but a few of you perhaps are not reading the end part of the chapters quite as well as you should. Particularly these last two chapters. The setup on the chapters was the first couple of historians mention what are pretty standard Western history Eurocentric arguments about the importance of states, and in the first place, and then the importance of development of capitalism in the second place. But then later on in the chapter, you'll find usually a non-Western historian or a global historian who is saying that the European situation wasn't so unique. So in the first instance, when we're talking about political states, there is an argument that European states were unique, and Victor Lieberman comes in and says, well, no, because there's places like Siam, Burma and Vietnam which aren't huge empires, and which share a lot of commonality with European states. So those of you who argued that European states were unique without mentioning Lieberman hadn't really got the full gist of the chapter. And again, in this last post on economics, several of you argue that European economic institutions, development of capitalism, was completely unique to Europe, without mentioning what Labib has to say about the development of capitalism in Islam. So it is important that you read the whole chapter and you reflect what's going on in the whole chapter, or you're only getting half the argument, and it's not going to get you a great deal of points, which is probably what you're after in the end. So those are my sort of general comments about the end of part one. I also want to think in part two, coming into part two, about your responses, about crafting a good response to the posts that you've read of other students. Some of you have been skipping this part. This again is going to bring your grade down a little bit as well. The response is a necessary part by midnight on Monday or Thursday. Okay, so we're going to move into the second part of the course now, about revolutions. A whole slew of revolutions that shake the world in the period from around 1700 through to around 1900. Okay, so we are thinking about the American Revolution, which you should know something about, and the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and various revolutions in Latin America. We're also thinking about the Industrial Revolution, which is another huge change that causes turmoil and change in this period. these revolutions seem to sweep backwards and forwards across the Atlantic. And one of the things we'll be asking is how these revolutions come about and what causes them and what connects them. So in the chapter you'll be reading for Thursday, we'll be asking, sort of following on from the economic arguments of chapter 6, was this a bourgeois revolution? Was this to do with the development of merchant capitalism, and in some ways were these merchant capitalists responsible at the heart of these various revolutions? The next chapter after that, chapter 8, I guess, will be asking, was nationalism the cause of these revolutions? Was there something happening, particularly in places like America and Latin America and Haiti, which made those countries want to break away from their mother countries? And in France, we return back to this idea of the bourgeois, and was the bourgeois, which it just means middle class, were they in some way to blame, responsible for? Blame isn't the right word because not all these revolutions are negative, but were they the root cause of these revolutions? We'll also be thinking about the industrial revolutions, I said, but thinking particularly about the connections between the industrial revolution and the slave trade, and particularly the money that comes out of the combined profits from the slave and sugar trades, which go directly to Britain, and Britain's very early boost in the Industrial Revolution, by which it gets at least about 100 years leg up on everybody else. And finally, at the end of this part, we'll be thinking about the Asian world. Are there things happening in Asia which have a direct corollary with what's happening in the Americas and in Europe? To support this section, we'll be listening to 2 radio programs and watching a YouTube video. So our first radio program will be on the Terror, and that's the period of the French Revolution where the guillotine gets taken out and dusted off, and it gets very, very violent. And how does these ideas about revolution, about fraternity and peace, turn into such a bloody massacre? Our YouTube video is about the slave trade and thinking back on 200 years after the end of the slave trade. And our final radio program reflects on Asia and thinks about the Opium War. And the Opium War between Britain and China, which really sort of boosts Britain's standing in the world and reduces China's. And that will give us a nice segue into the development of imperialism, which we'll talk about in part 3. So hopefully that's given you sort of a good idea of what's coming up and how it all fits together. I just want to point out once again that it's very, very important that you do the videos, the narrated PowerPoints which go along with the course. Somebody came to see me today and said, well, I'm not quite sure how it all fits together. Well, that might be because some of you may be skipping doing the narrated PowerPoints. The narrated PowerPoints are an essential part of the course. I provide background information, I provide timelines, I provide a little summaries of what you should be getting from the readings and how they fit into the history. Most of them are quite short, 15 to 20 minutes. They are a required part of the course, so please make sure you don't skip them. And a last word, remember you should be filling in your midterm exam as you're going along. It'll be much, much harder to try and do it in the middle of October. So if you haven't been doing it, make sure you go back and do it now, and then you won't be left with 6 or 7 or 8 weeks worth of stuff to try and catch up. Okay, that's it, and I will look forward to hearing from you all on Thursday. Bye.